If you ever made a business decision in a moment of pressure and then paid for it later, this episode is for you. So today we're talking about something most entrepreneurs never factor into their profit margins, your nervous system. Because when you're leading under stress, urgency, or fear, you're not just busy, you may be dysregulated. That can show up in your hiring, your pricing, your team dynamics, and yes, your revenue. I am your host, Jazzy T, along with RJ Williams, and welcome to Elevating Enterprise, the podcast that gives you a 100,000-foot view of success and the elevator access to get there. And joining us today is Jill Peterson, founder and chief growth strategist of Clover Insights. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Jill.
Yes, absolutely. So we're so excited to have you here. We actually connected at the Athena Social and heard about the amazing speech you gave at last year's Women Empowering Women Conference through the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, which we are excited to be a part of again. Well, for my first time this year. Will you be there at that event?
I am going to be there at that event. I'm looking forward to it. I went to it 2 years ago and it was fantastic. And then, like you said, last year I got the opportunity to speak and it was so much fun. And this year I get to go as an attendee again. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that maybe a little later in the show. But first, Jill, can you give us your 60-second elevator pitch?
I would be happy to. So as you mentioned, I'm Jill Peterson. I am the founder and chief growth strategist for Clover Insights. And what I do is I love to help those business leaders that are stuck in the day-to-day, working in their business rather than on their business, or those business leaders that have grown organically and now they're ready to go to the next level and they're just not sure of that clear path forward, or the individual that they built a really solid foundation and grew very quickly, but now they've outgrown that infrastructure. And I just, through my mental fitness work and my 4P pathway, which is aligning people, process, profits, and purpose, that's a mouthful, right? I help to align that so that they're really just as strong on the inside as they are on the outside. Because when you have that clarity and you're able to really work from the inside as your best version, you are able to shift everything.
And so here at Elevating Enterprise, we want to help people grow from like a small or maybe even a solopreneur into a medium, into a large corporation, right? So let's talk about how that mental fitness can really impact, the bottom line. Like how, if your nervous system is reactive, what does that do for your business?
Absolutely. So let me first just say that, because, the term mental fitness gets thrown around a lot now. And it wasn't something we were ever taught when we were in school, right? We learned about physical fitness, but we never really were taught about mental fitness. And now it's something that's so critical, because when we are mentally strong, we show up differently, right? We're able to communicate better, which improves our relationships. We're able to have more happiness, which allows us to get more joy out of what we're doing. Most of us entrepreneurs don't get into it just because we had to. We get into it because it's something we really felt passionate about. We had that strong purpose, but somewhere along the line, sometimes with all the pressure, that purpose just goes away. And so I find that when you are really able to tap into, we have neural pathways in our brain. You may or may not have already known that, but on the left side is where we have our judge and our saboteurs. And our saboteurs are really our strengths that we turn into weaknesses because we overuse them. And when you are able to work from the right side of your brain, that's where your big picture thinking is, your deep curiosity, your creativity. So imagine what you can accomplish and where you can go when you're tapping into those tools rather than being driven by the automatic habits of our brain, which is our judge that kind of runs the show each and every day for us.
Did you want to say something here, Ruben?
I'm listening. I
okay.
want to listen and I'll tap in.
Okay.
So, it's interesting because, we have a lot of these type of conversations on the Jazzcast Pros network, especially where we have, female hosts and we have female guests, and it's, all of this sort of energy. And so that's why I wanted to pause for a moment to see what the male in the room had to say about
it. I'm going to jump in a minute. I have my notes ready.
Okay, all right, absolutely. All right, so let's like kind of dig down a little bit to like the financial cost of your emotional decisions because as I mentioned,
Absolutely.
as women we're always labeled as, kind of being too emotional, and especially
Hmm.
women business leaders, like, oh, is she going to cry, or like all of these type of
Right.
things, right? But let's just talk about that in general, like whoever you are, like whatever your gender may be, like if you make a emotional decision to say like hire too fast or delay firing somebody needs to go, like how does that really impact, and how does Clover Insights help people to make those decisions more based on data?
Sure. So there's a couple of things there, right? We do want to use the left side of our brain is our analytical brain, and we do want to use that when we want to tap into that data feature, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things that I do have is a decision making tool that can help you get out of your head. Because what happens is when we're making a big decision, we are emotional about it. And it's rightfully so, right? You're thinking about all these different scenarios. A lot of times you're on the hamster wheel of, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And then we talk ourselves out of it and we decide, no, I'm going to do this. And it's really hard to get out of our own way sometimes.
Yeah.
But when we put things in black and white, we can really then look at things for what they are. And my decision making tool helps you to break it down to what's the most important things. So to really kind of dumb it down for the purpose of our show, right, to give a scenario, let's just pretend that we're trying to make a simple decision like who to go with which marketing firm.
Okay.
You might want to really think about what's important, right? Well, the cost of the different firms is going to come into play, but it's also going to be perhaps maybe personal relationship is something that's an important factor to you. You want to have a personal relationship with the person that is going to be your main point of contact. It could be that you want them to be tested and have come with high testimonials, that somebody is already recommended them. And so what we do is we break down all of the things that might be important to you. And then we go through and we do kind of a simple rating score. But what happens is when we get out of our head and we put it on the paper, we actually then can see without a doubt which is the right answer.
Hmm.
We eliminate the emotion piece of it. Now, the other thing to think about is when we're dealing with emotions, if we are coming at it from simply a place of judgment, right? So I'll talk about the judge for a minute. We have three forms of judge. We have the judge of self. That's that negative voice that everyone has in their head that either tells them they did a bad job or tells them they're not good enough, or maybe replays that mistake over and over again in your head. And it doesn't matter if that voice is loud or soft, every one of us has it and it's there. But we also have judge of others, and that's when we're critical of another person, whether it's about how they look or the things they do. It might even be about the things they don't do. And for a lot of us, some folks don't feel like they have the judge of others. And I am one of those people that when I first learned about this, I thought, oh, I'm not a judgy person. And I'm the kind of person that if we were live right now, I'd be coming up, hugging you, and just, I really love people. And so I thought, I'm not judgy, but we do it when we don't even realize we're doing it. And this is a silly example, but for example, when I get upset that my husband loaded the dishwasher improperly because you open that top rack and the glass spills all the water all over the place, right?
Yeah.
If in my mind I'm thinking, oh, he did it again, I might not be saying anything directly to him, but that is a form of judge of others because we're letting that negative emotion bubble up inside of us.
Yeah.
But the last way is such a critical way, and that's the judge of circumstances. And that's when we tell ourselves, I'll be happy when. And we fill that blank with whatever. It could be, I'll be happy when I get a promotion. I'll be happy when I make more money. I'll be happy when I can double the size of my business. And when we're constantly chasing after something, we don't stop to enjoy what we're doing. And when we're letting those negative emotions dictate and drive things, it doesn't allow us to look at things with a clear head. So we might find ourselves in a situation where we're letting fear hold us back. That solo entrepreneur that wants to double their business, if they're scared or they don't feel like they're worthy and the fear is front and center, they're not going to go ahead and do what needs to be done. And that's going to directly impact their bottom line because they're capable of so much more, but they're holding themselves back.
I feel when you have some competence in what you're doing, you get that that self-confidence and that purpose-driven
Absolutely.
energy. And so I go by the three D's. Once you get that, then it's about the discipline, the drive, the determination. And that's when you can't
Absolutely.
stop that individual that wants to be successful. So a lot of this is about kind of self-awareness. I call it looking in the mirror and finding the truth. There, all your answers are there. And so if you want to really like grab onto your 4 Ps, the person has to look in the mirror and say, yes, I want to do this. And then grab the 4P system and start following that. Like you said, write it down, be real intentional and purposeful about where you want to go.
Absolutely.
Do it. It's called, like Nike, just do it. Because that'll
Absolutely.
eliminate some of that self-doubt and some of that judgment, kind of mindset. So you can
Absolutely.
just move forward with your own confidence and competence.
Absolutely. And I love your 3Ds. I think, the other thing to consider, and this is where the 4Ps come into play, right? You can have the perfect process. You can have, be making money. But if you're not taking care of your people, then you're not going to go as far as someone that is. Taking care of your people also means not only being mentally fit for yourself, but allowing your team to be mentally fit as well.
Yeah.
Because our emotions are contagious. If I came in here and let's just say I let fear get in the way and my judge was front and center, that's going to trigger your judge. And then we're not going to be able to have a good, fruitful conversation. So think about how many business leaders are under pressure. They're feeling that anxiety. They're feeling that stress. And a team member comes up to ask a question and now they just kind of bark out the answer and they don't mean it. They have every good intention of just driving a full, successful team that has good culture. But now you've negatively impacted that trust, that ability to be able to communicate in a way that helps people to feel like they're part of the purpose as well.
Absolutely. I like the word there, trust. Because if people don't believe in what's happening, there's no action going to happen.
Absolutely.
So they have to trust everyone. Those things we learn younger. Attitude determines altitude. Those things, you have to practice them in real time in order to get the results you want.
Absolutely.
I think trust leads back to your process too. So, a lot of times when you're starting out, you're maybe flying by the seat of your pants, but now you have employees that are expecting a paycheck. So therefore, indirectly they're expecting a profit so that you have something to pay them. So talk a little bit about like process and how important that is, or how do you reassess? How do you use the data to look at your process and see if that's working, or do we need to make a new one?
Certainly. Well, for so many people, I find that when I work with individuals, you'd be surprised the number of people that actually don't have processes documented. Yep. And it's really about going back to the basics, right? We need to be able to make sure we're documenting our processes. It doesn't mean they can't change. It doesn't mean it can't be fluid or that it can't grow with you as you grow. But if we're not documenting those processes, that's really the first step, because then everybody's clear on the expectation, right? There's no confusion if you have a team of individuals of what's the next step. And it's really about getting that down on paper, making sure that everyone has it and everyone's following it and holding people accountable to that. And then when you're looking at a process and you're really diving in deep, and this is where I just that's kind of my superpower, right? I'm able to look in and see what's working, what's not, and we look at the moving parts and then break it down. But really, if you're looking at a process, and let's say something keeps happening with clients and you look at that and you notice it as a trend, this is where that deep curiosity comes in really well, right? Yeah. If we're upset that we lose a client, and yes, it's very upsetting to lose a client, but if we stay there and just dwell on that, we can't really uncover what went wrong. But if we do look closely and say, okay, what happened here? That allows us to get deeply curious. And now we can get creative and say, okay, is this a trend? Do we need to do something differently? Do we need to add a quality step? Do we need to make sure that we're changing the process to match what our clients' needs are and allowing us to be as productive as possible? And that's really where you can see some of those holes that fall in a process and where you might need some attention.
Yeah, and I think this is where I don't want to say judgment is positive. This is where putting this type of framework on coming up with a conclusion, the judgment has to be in there because this is business analysis. You have to look at the past state, current state to determine where the future state is going. So what you
Absolutely.
described there is that sequence, and it is important. You know, in a kind of change environment, you have to do that. It's being honest with yourself. And like I said, it's going back to the mirror after you do that. It's not a judgment like an opinion, but it's like, okay, we're being realistic with oneself. Now we can start to make the changes and try to make improvements now.
Absolutely. I call it the hand on the hot stove, right? Our emotions can be an alert for us. If my hand was on a hot stove, my brain would immediately say, take your hand off, otherwise you're going to burn your hand completely.
Yeah.
Where if we use our negative emotions, that just tells us something needs our attention. And then if we can learn to build up the mental muscles that allow us to stop and pause, I love the power of the pause, right? We pause and then really think about how do we want to show up in this moment? What is it that needs our attention and what do we want to do about it? And it really can be quite powerful because like you said, it's not about judgment, right? When we lose a client, we might feel those judge emotions. We might beat ourselves up over it. But if we can get past that and we can look beyond, we can now say with discernment, okay, what did happen? You know, where did we fall down? What didn't work? And is this something that is a common problem and we're going to see it over and over again? Or is it a one-off? And then when we look at it with discernment, it gives us a chance to decide what then needs to be the next step.
And I just want to throw in a couple of industry terms too, because sometimes you might hear acronyms and not understand what they mean. And I'm a type of person where, you know, if you hear something and nobody takes the time to explain it to you, you feel like I don't want to be asking a stupid question. There are no stupid questions, right? So allow me to answer a question that one of our listeners may be having, you know, right now. Like, I've heard this term SOP. Like, is that what you're talking about here? Is that what this is?
It is. So when we document our processes, you will definitely hear it called an SOP. And it doesn't matter if you're a solo entrepreneur, even documenting your processes at that point gives you the chance to be scalable later. So and they might change and they might evolve and they might be fluid and that might be okay. But you do still want to document things. Creating a system where you are able to repeat something, it does a lot of things for a solo entrepreneur. It lets them not only be consistent, but it also allows them to be in a good position should they want to expand and start to add people to their team because now it's already documented. And it also allows them to do that reflection we just talked about, where if something does go wrong, they can look back and say, okay, what part of the process fell down? And this is true at any size company. And I've seen it at solo entrepreneurs, companies of 300-400 people. You'd be surprised the number of people that just don't document.
Yeah.
Or we document and we think we've captured it, but we really have to do it. I call it the peanut butter and jelly approach. We have to write it like we're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You have to actually say, take out the bread, take out 2 pieces of bread, take out the knife. So documenting it with that detail allows you for growth and opportunity.
And I just want to mention too, so I was recently in a cohort at the Rock Women's Business Center.
Ooh.
And we did a SOP around a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I was so surprised. There was 8 different ways to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
There is.
And I was like, holy crap, something that you would think, of course, everybody starts with the peanut butter first and spreads it down. And then, of course, you put the jelly on the other side. And then, of course, you put it together and you cut it down the middle. Well, maybe that's how you do it, you know, at, let's just say, a restaurant business. You do that at your restaurant, but maybe this other restaurant is known for cutting it diagonally. Right. And so if you don't write it down, or if you don't use the chunky peanut butter every single time that your customers are used to seeing. So that's really what it's about. When you have a standard operating procedure, people can expect that consistency from your restaurant, from your business. This is the way it's done there, right? You come and you sit down. within 30 seconds, you're going to have water with a bowl of lemons optional that you can add to your water or not. That's something that people like. I know RJ, my husband, he loves his lemon water, right? So, to know that we can sit down and have that option without having, hey, excuse me, can I get some lemons
Right.
here? So that's an added value for your customer. And if that's something that's
Absolutely.
wrote down and it's executed every single time, again, added value, people come to expect that. And then that one day when they don't get it, like, hey, are you having a bad day? Like, where's the lemon?
Well, the
Absolutely.
consistency contributes to your success.
Yeah.
It does.
It's like Jill says, it's a differentiator. It's showing consistency that, as you said, Jazz, that I know I'm coming there, my sandwich is going to be cut diagonally. That's how I like it. That's why I go there.
Yep.
And it allows you to iterate your SOPs to meet a growth demand possibly down the
Absolutely.
line.
Well, and
Excellent.
it goes back to that word trust again, too. Your customer starts to trust you because they know what they can expect each and every time.
Absolutely.
And if we're doing it differently every single time, when we get to that place of discernment where we need to look at a process to see what's working and what's not, it's too much data. We
Yeah.
don't know. We haven't done it consistently enough to know what did fall down.
It's called scattered data. And so
Scattered data. So if we do it the same way every time, then we can look at it clearly and then really determine, okay, what's working and what's not, and where do I need to add value? Where do I need quality steps? Where do I need to put someone into the process? That's great for when people want to grow.
Absolutely.
So let's take it back a little bit. Speaking about, emotional regulation, right? So as the leader, we have our SOP. It's wrote down, it's documented. You cut the peanut butter and jelly sandwich diagonally, but yet this one employee just will not follow it. It is bubbling up and you're getting really angry in the moment. Are there any like simple tactics that a leader can use to try to like calm down and be able to fix the situation?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you asked that because the mental fitness program that I offer makes it really easy for business leaders. One of the reasons why I love it so much is because we know there's certain things that are good for us, right? Like most folks would feel that meditation is a great practice. But for a lot of us, do we have the time to meditate? If Jazz, if you and I are in a discussion and we start getting heated, I can't say, I'm going to go meditate for an hour and then we're going to come back and finish this conversation. But if you're in the middle of talking to an employee and that employee is just not following the process and you're feeling all the emotions, again, use that as an alert. But what we have to do is we need to be able to switch our mind to the right side of our brain so that we can come from a place of what we call sage. And this gives us a chance to tap into those other powers, the deep curiosity, the big picture thinking, all our positive emotions. And so what we need to do is to switch to sage, we have to do some type of physical sensation. So something as simple as taking 2 fingertips and rubbing them together. Mm-hmm. And if you do that so slowly and you focus in on it and you feel the ridges of your fingerprint, within 10 seconds, you've literally switched to the right side of your brain. They've proven it under an MRI. You can see that side of your brain light up. And now, if you're talking to an employee, you might not start doing this, right? But you could wiggle your toes. You could take a couple of deep breaths. You could look at that employee with such intention that you see the color of their eyes, or you really notice what color shirt they're wearing. You could, take your hands and rub them on the tops of your legs if you're sitting at a table, and they might not know you're doing that. You could listen, like really listen to what they're saying. Listen to the tone and timbre of their voice. Any one of those physical sensations switches us to the right side of the brain. That's that power of the pause. We've now paused long enough that it's not going to be an automatic response. Because one of the things that's happened to us is that when we were very young, that's when the judge was first created. And we have these saboteurs, as I mentioned, which are our strengths turned into weaknesses. And what's really fun is I do have a saboteur assessment that people can take that tells you your top saboteurs. And those saboteurs become an automatic habit for us. I laugh and usually say it's kind of your go-to move. So when we're at a wedding and everybody has that go-to dance move that they do, it's our go-to move. It worked for us. One of my saboteurs is my hyperachiever. My hyperachiever allowed me to see a tremendous amount of success in my career. So because it worked, it's an automatic response. But what's happening now is under pressure, we're relying too heavily on that. And that's not always the tool we want to pull out. So if we use the negative emotion that we're feeling as an alert, okay, something needs my attention, do a physical sensation, the fingertips, you can do touch, you can do breath, you can listen, you can wiggle those toes. Any one of those things can allow us to switch. And now I can say, okay, how do I really want to show up in this moment? What's the best way for me to get creative and approach this problem with my employee? Because if I just let my emotions dictate how I'm going to respond, he's not going to hear me or she's not going to hear me. It's going to get their judge to come out and they're not going to change their behavior.
I love that idea of doing this in front of the employee, though, because then word starts going around like, how was your meeting with Jill? I don't know. She started rubbing those fingers. So I knew I had to bring it back a notch.
You're right. When we do the teamwork and everybody goes through the program, it's amazing because they start using the terminology. It's like a shared language that they now have. And some folks will be able to say, okay, is that your judge or is that your sage? So you do see that happen across teams, and it is pretty spectacular.
I'm curious about these other saboteurs. So you mentioned for you, it's overachieving? Hyperachieving.
Yes.
What are some of the other ones called?
Absolutely. So usually there's 9 of them, and you can experience any of them at any time. But for most of us, we have 1 or 2 that rise to the top. So I will give you my top 3 and then I'll go into the others. I have a hyperachiever. And again, hyperachiever, for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, they're thinking my hyperachiever is, who I rely on. And that's great. But we tie our self-worth and our success we tie our self-love to our accomplishments. So it's conditional love, not self-love. And when we fail, we are very critical on ourselves. There's the pleaser who's trying to make everybody else happy. You can imagine my pleaser and hyperachiever do not always get along in my head. There's the controller who always has to be in control of every situation. There's the stickler. The stickler is the person. I laugh about the sticklers because they do everything right? They want everything to be perfect. So from an employee standpoint, you want 20 sticklers because they always are very agreeable to everything. They do really good, strong work. It's high quality. What you don't realize about the stickler is they hold themselves up sometimes. If they can't get it perfectly, they might look at it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and now they're late delivering something. Or worse yet, they might not even start a project because they're so fearful of getting it wrong. There's the hyper rational. So we talked earlier, RJ, you were talking about that data, right? The hyper rational is so dependent on their data that they lack any emotion. But again, there's strengths and then there's weaknesses to every saboteur. There is, how haven't I mentioned yet? There's the victim, person that always feels like things are getting done to them. There's the hypervigilant. You're always on guard that you're worried the worst case scenario is going to happen. Who else? Did I say them all? I think I might have mentioned most of them.
So you had mentioned that saboteurs are strengths that we turn into weaknesses. So for example, if somebody's saboteur is the victim, like how is that a strength in their own mind? Like why do they develop that habit to go to?
So when you're younger, because they're all formed at a very young age without us even realizing it. And this is why I can point out that when multiple people experience the same thing, but they all come out of it a little differently and have a different perception, it's because it's their strength that's showing up. And so what happens is, and the reason why our strengths can get turned into weaknesses, I think this is important to mention for your audience, is that think of a hammer. Most of us would agree that a hammer is a very, very good tool, right? We use it all the time. Most of us use it. However, you wouldn't use a hammer to paint a canvas because you'd end up smashing it, right? It would cut right through the canvas. Yeah. So when we have these saboteurs, we're taking the strengths of that saboteur and we're now turning it into a weakness, and because we're overusing and we're abusing it. So the victim who was feeling like everything's happening to them, they might have originally did that to protect them. They might have experienced trauma. Something might have happened in their life that was very severe that they felt they needed to protect themselves. And they recognized that they were a victim in what they were in. But now that protection that they give themselves is not necessarily helping them. It's causing them to, maybe it's impacting their relationships, maybe it's impacting how they show up at work, and that's preventing them from being able to really step into their true potential.
Yeah, and so there's another thing that my team uses. We call it synthesis. That's where that has to come in. So when you see these situations and information come up, you can kind of synthesize to what's relevant to you and what's not. But I think this is a maturity model from what you're saying, more so than something you can get up right out the gate. You kind of maybe have to go through your 4 Ps in order to kind of put yourself in a mindset to absorb that. Because I think,
Right.
like you said, those have shown up, those 9 traits or saboteurs have showed up, I think, in every individual
They
at one
have.
time or another. And then you have to go through kind of mature, because I've had some of those myself. And then what I've done is I've had good mentors who've, taught me how to listen, showed me to be accountable and responsible. That's why I call it the mirror effect. The first person
Absolutely.
that done that was my dad. And so I started getting that good mentorship in order to understand that, okay, if something's happening in your space or sphere, you are a participant in it, and you got to figure out what, quality control, how can you control this or
Right.
get ahead of it so it doesn't impact you negatively.
Absolutely. We say in the program, so the mental fitness piece is part of my people component, and that it's the positive intelligence program. And what happens is we say that you can turn any challenge into a gift and opportunity.
Right.
It's really about how do you want to look at it and what do you want to do about it? You get to control. It really is about empowering yourself to decide, how do I want to show up? What do I want in this moment? And what do I want to now do with this? Because life is tough. We're going to deal with challenges each and every day, but how we show up to handle those challenges, we get to decide that.
Love it. So it is Women's History Month. So
It
I'm
is.
curious, how are you honoring it this year?
So actually, I was very honored to be part of an interview that a good friend of mine, Stephanie Armstrong, is doing. She's highlighting all different women throughout the month, and she selected me as one of those individuals. So I'll be highlighted there for that. I am going to the Women Empowering Women Conference, which I'm super excited about. And I have another podcast that's lined up. So I'm trying to, I think it's important to get this message out to as many people as possible, because we all have so much potential. And when we show up as our best self and we are able to really impact others in that most profound way, just imagine what the world would be if everybody did that. Like, we would just be a very different place. And I think women in particular, it's our time to shine. Nothing against you, RJ. You can shine too, but it's our time to shine.
Well, women been shining for a while. I think it's at this point. I think everybody needs to find out, where they can work together and
Absolutely.
what's real and what's not. Let's not get, not too many cliches, because what's happening in the world is real. So we have to
Absolutely.
figure out, how do we really impact, help, what have you, to make things better. And I think just more standing, I guess they're using the word 10 toes down, that phrase, meaning to be solid in what you believe in and respect others, and then find a common ground to work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as we, get ready to wrap up, I just want to open it up to you, Jill. If there's anything that we missed, and open it up to give your information, how people can connect with you.
Absolutely. So people can absolutely connect with me through my website, which is findyourclover.com. They can also email me directly, or call me, and all of that information is right on my website. But like I said, if anybody's interested in taking that saboteur assessment, it is a free assessment, and I'm happy to have individuals.
Excellent.
That awareness alone is so powerful. Even if we don't work together, I just love people to be aware of what's getting in their way, because I think people have the opportunity to really grow, to really offer more. Our potential is so profound, and we are the only ones holding ourselves back. And I think that when we can show up as the best version of ourselves, that's contagious. Just like negative emotions are contagious, so are positive. And so we just want to spread that across anywhere.
Great.
And I'll say, what I've learned from this conversation is, when you regulate your nervous system and you can align your people and your process and let data help to guide some of those decisions, then you can start to scale sustainably.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you take care of your people, when you document your processes, when you make sure you have the right technology and tools in place, and when you are focused on your profits, I know we didn't get into this a lot today, but the people are scared to look at their budgets sometimes. Some people don't even put together a budget, but when you use that as a roadmap, that can be, it's data, right? It's data. It gives us, we wouldn't go on a trip without bringing a map. So why do we try to
Right.
maneuver and navigate our businesses without the financial map? And people get scared of that. And so they don't use that as a tool that they can have as be a huge benefit in where they go. And then when you remember your purpose, it can be unstoppable and you can be scalable and you can have growth and the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask that, what the profits,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, let's go ahead.
how do the profits fit in with because the profits elicit another emotion when you see the money actually coming in, and because it highlights the fruit of the labor, but it also elicits an emotional response depending on, I got some, because some people go buy a boat, you know, and some people go on vacation, and I done all the work then, but then they may come back down, and then that there's those emotional triggers again. What has been some of
Absolutely.
your experience with people who've gone through that?
Absolutely. And you're right. It creates a lot of reaction from us, right? If the numbers are good, we're happy. If they're bad, we're sad, or we're mad. But we're not using it as data. And it really is, it tells us a story. And it's not just the bottom line either. We want to understand, how are we spending our money? What are we spending our money on? Is there an opportunity to negotiate and get better rates with vendors that we're using? Is there an opportunity to cut costs? Nowadays, there are so many different applications, and they're easy ones, right? We might do Calendly that's $7 a month. We might do another one that's $15 a month. And at the time, as a business owner, it's a no-brainer because that's not that much money. But do you know how many times we do that application over the course of time? And now we're spending hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars on applications, and some of them we're not even using, or
Right.
we're using them but not to their full stability. So our roadmap, our budget, or our finances, they don't have to be a scary thing. And I find that so many people, I did forget a saboteur, it's the avoider. So I get a lot of avoiders who want to avoid even looking at it, or they might look at it but then not know what to do with it. And so it's really about getting a level of comfort to know, what am I looking at? What do I do with this information, right? That's the next big question is, okay, I see it, but I don't know what to do with it. So what do we do with that information? And when we can simplify it and break it down, it eliminates fear, it eliminates that avoidance, that hesitancy, and it empowers them to decide, okay, what decision do I want to make? Do I put this money back into my business? Do I invest it in something else? Do I invest it in a team? Or do I go buy a boat? Sometimes you are at that point where you can go buy a boat.
Yeah.
But I think, I always tell people, information is power. Unless you have the information, you're making decisions blind. So why not open up that window, look in and really see what's going on so that you can make the best decisions for you and your business and your team.
And one more thing to that, should you, as the decision maker, deal with that alone, or find somebody that's maybe can complement them in helping them look at that kind of without the judgment, be neutral? Because I don't suggest doing that with people internally, in fact, because usually they make the money isn't there, then you got a different thing, and maybe it's just like you said about sitting there calm, looking at the data, and then doing some quality management from there to make the right decision, rather than eliciting somebody else's emotions into it. To then now it's disrupted. Now everybody's panicking.
Yeah.
This is if the profits aren't there, but if they're there, it does the same thing. Oh, maybe you showed the employee, they say, hey, I should get more money now that I see that. So how do you deal with that? Should the decision maker deal with that from a neutral space, or is everybody involved?
So I think I'm going to answer this a couple of different ways because I think you're bringing up a lot of really good points. I think first off, it's important for the business leader to have a good understanding. So they want to look at that, but you want to look at it with discernment and not judgment. So doing some of those physical sensations to get you into your sage brain, look at it with discernment. And then I don't really suggest just blatantly sharing everything with everyone because it does create confusion. And it can solicit a lot of different emotions. And so it's a being choosy about what we share. However, I am a huge advocate of transparency. So I believe when a leader is transparent and they can share the right information that's going to motivate the team, it's going to allow the team to share in the why, to share in the purpose. That is going to be key and very special when they can create that moment. But I think your first question about should they do it alone, most business leaders are, in my experience, either not doing it, or if they are doing it, they're scared and don't know what to do with it. And so they need some of that outside guidance. They need another person, like I come in very neutral. I'm not judging, but I'm helping to give guidance. And a lot of times there's embarrassment, right? If they don't feel like those numbers are where they're supposed to be, they don't want anybody else to see it. But by hiding it, you're not addressing it. And, it's really about bringing it to the forefront and tackling it head on. Because if we know what we're up against, then we can put an action plan in place. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about because everyone has to start somewhere. And your numbers are going to keep changing and evolving over time. Right. And this allows us to be able to really kind of tackle it from a very neutral standpoint. Thank you so much.
A lot of good insights from Clover.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking with both of you, and I was so honored to be asked to join you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's our honor to have you as well. One question, do you have a budgeting tool that you suggest, or is that a service that you offer?
It's a service that I offer. So I create it for each individual. I have kind of a template that I use, but I don't want to fit any one person into a box. So I customize it based on their needs. And what I do with that budget is I also create kind of a dashboard for them. And it's a tracker that they can keep tracking their revenue as things are giving and taking so that they can see how that's going to impact. And let's say they want to now maybe add a body. Well, let's look at what that does to the budget when you add that body. So it's very fluid. It's something that they can play with and feel very comfortable. And I show them how to do it and I give them the tools so that they can feel empowered.
Love that.
Excellent.
Clarity is profitable.
It is.
And
Clarity does everything. So it's all about, using that clarity to help you move forward.
Yeah, my team uses what we call a custom project management office that is operational, focused, and kind of does something similar just to make sure they know every week they can refer, hey, is this going the right way, is in the direction, and if not, they can just see it right there on their dashboard.
I love that.
And
I love that.
Make a change quickly rather than let it become overwhelming.
I love that. It allows everybody to be accountable and it allows everybody to be part of the why, right? This is why we're doing this. I love that.
All right. Well, if you are ready to start leading from a point of clarity and you want to get away from some of that fear and that pressure, definitely connect with Jill at findyourclover.com. Thanks again for joining us here at Elevating Enterprise.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.
You do the same. Thanks, Jill.
Bye.